All right, let's get started on part two of this episode with back to the Dragon Reborn. I wanted to actually back up a second because we didn't talk a lot about the girls and what happened in their chapters.
Mhm.
Um,
What chapters are we going to start with?
we're going to start with chapter 33. So we finished up last time with Matt getting out of um, Tarvalon, headed to Camelin to deliver his letter for Elaine. And so we talked a little bit about the girls with their interaction with Matt, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time in their chapters because it's hard to talk about what's going on there from our perspective because you have a lot of potential spoilers here with what was going on in those chapters. I will say though that kind of something I touched on is that what's happening here is the pieces are all moving to a convergence as Jordan tends to do in his climaxes. Is that once you reach about the halfway 2/3 points of the book, everything starts moving to a point, including characters. They all start moving to a point so they can reach that, especially in these early books, reach that climax together. Giggity. But what makes the books work so well is that it's never contrived. Okay, so the girls, they're strong female characters, as we've kind of ranted about, because they have their own agency. They are making rational decisions. Even if you, the reader, look at it and say, why are you doing that? That's stupid. It can be a bad decision. It can be a stupid decision, but it's always a rational decision from the character's perspective. They always have reasons for what they're doing, and those reasons always make sense with the information the character has and with the personality the character has. You know, of course, yes, they're untrained. They're fairly untrained, but they're also on has to hunt the Black Ajah, and they have been out in the world. They have had some worldly experiences far beyond what normal novices and accepted do. So they're not completely helpless out there. And given their personalities, of course they're going to go chasing the Black Ajah, and especially since Leandrin included, and they have a personal vendetta against her. So all of these decisions make sense, even if we, the reader from the outside, would look at it and say, that's dumb because we have all this other information. And that came to mind because right here at the beginning of chapter 33.
Let me stop you for just a second, real quick. So while you were kind of starting that off, I wanted to check, and I should have done this before, and I'm going to make it a point to do this before we do these episodes again. Check for comments, because I was like, well, maybe we can address comments as well when we're going through this. And we had a nice long one from Paul on there. I don't know if you, I mean, his name's there, Paul.
Yeah.
I don't want to mispronounce it because it's spelled like ramen noodles. So I'm going to say ramen. If it's Remen, please correct us. I apologize. But he left a nice long message, and we'll address that after we go through our bit, because he actually had some very good points, and we'll just read it off. And
I meant to do that as well. Thank you for doing that.
And well, yeah, we'll just go through that afterwards. So we'll get through our thoughts on these chapters, and then we'll talk about what our commenters say. All right.
So what made me think about that, the need to go back, and was one, because we didn't spend a lot of time on those chapters with the ladies, but then also because right here at the beginning of chapter 33, when we get back to Perrin and what's going on with that group, he sees this weird footprint in stone. He's staring down at this footprint that doesn't make any sense, because one, it's a solid black footprint and it's in stone, and two, it's a dog print, it's a canine print, if a dog was the size of a small horse. So it doesn't make any sense.
Like Freddy?
Exactly. So we, the reader, can look at that and say, dummy, why don't you say something about that? Because we, the reader, know that the author didn't mention that for no reason, and he should mentioned this to Moraine. Now it's highly improbable that Moraine or Lan didn't notice this, especially Lan. But so for us, that's a dumb decision, but it makes sense for Perrin.
Well, it goes back to our pie chart. You know, the worst thing, the dark one, that, the white cloaks, and miscommunication.
Almost all the pie chart, yeah. But Perrin's very new to this mystical and mythical world, so when we're inside his head here, with Jordan telling us his thoughts, it does make sense that Perrin would just think it off, that, as he says, I'm getting too tired to think straight, that it's a curiosity, it's a weirdness, whatever, just move on. So it in a lot of ways, and we've kind of talked about this with his with how hard he pushes away the wolf, that for us, the reader, that might seem dumb with how obstinate he's being, but for him, it makes total sense that it is a rational decision. And so we, the reader, can look at that and say, well, you know, this is a fantasy story, so he needs to, the sooner he embraces that and learns how to use it, the better. You know, same thing with Rand. The sooner you learn how to use this, the better. But in The Great Hunt, he was being incredibly hesitant to even think about sight in, let alone actually embracing it, let alone actually using it. I mean, he didn't even want to assume the void, because every time he did, that was the beginnings of embracing the power, and so it was always there calling to him and tempting him, and so he didn't even want to do it. So we, the reader, might think you're being obstinate, but it's a totally rational decision for the character. Versus the, you know, and not just the stupid show. I've mentioned it before, but the Critical Drinker has done a series of videos entitled "Why Modern Movies Suck," and kind of a connecting theme to all of that is stuff happens just because. So if a story seems very shallow, if it's a popcorn movie that you watch and then kind of forget about, it's probably because stuff happened just because. So speaking of which, so on page 376 in the paperback, he did not want to think about Hopper. He was succeeding in keeping live wolves out of his head, although at the price of feeling as if he had been hammered and drawn by a hasty hand. He did not want to think a dead wolf might be creeping in. He shook himself and forced his eyes wide open. Not even Hopper. So I love the way that ends there. Not even Hopper. So because Perrin felt so remember way back when he first met the wolves, it was Hopper who looked at him and almost kind of smiled. Not really, because the dog can't smile, but Perrin felt something. So that was kind of his first connection. So Hopper was the one who was kind of inviting Perrin to join their world. And then it was Hopper who got himself killed trying to intervene with the whitecloaks. So Perrin feels responsible. So he's got this connection to Hopper, but he's terrified of what this might mean. And again, miscommunication. He finally talked to Moraine about it, but only enough to kind of validate what he already thought, which was, I need to stay away from this as much as possible.
And her limited experience with it didn't help.
Yes. Yeah. All she could really tell him was, there's something to this wolf dream. There's something she kind of knows the idea of Reread, but she doesn't really know it like the dreamers know it.
Yeah, and this is where I like what Jordan does, because so many story writers make people omniscient. And here he shows a weakness with Moraine. Perrin knew so much about the world of dreams, but Moraine almost knows nothing. She's not studied it. She's not looked into it a whole lot. You've only got so many hours in the day. And even though you live longer as an Aes Sedai, she's been busy. And Varen studies things. And what more interesting thing if you were around than to find out, wow, there's this whole world that people could live in, but we don't know how to access. And
that ruins stuff for me quicker than anything. There's an example that just popped into my head is me and the wife used to watch Bones regularly. We didn't watch the last couple of seasons because it really fell apart. And one of the things that made it fall apart for me is in one of those last seasons, they had this recurring villain of this Moriarty type serial killer that was so smart he could do anything. And it just ruins it. It's no matter what they did, they thought they would think, aha, we've got him now. And it's, oh no, somehow he knew that we were doing this and we played right into his hands. And now the plot continues because the plot needs to continue. Well, it's boring and annoying, and it just ruins the storytelling. So nothing.
I think it's one of those where the seasons just go on and on, that the villains have to get bigger and badder and bigger and badder and bigger and badder, and eventually they jump the shark, you know.
Yeah.
A quick trivia fact for everybody: Bones is Lucifer's favorite show in the show Lucifer. So
it amuses me for some reason. But it's happened a lot in shows, you know, that we've watched, and it's one of the reasons that a number of series I got bored with, because you need that fallibility, and we've seen it a few times already, you know, to this point, halfway through the Dragon Reborn, of you know, it was a big effing deal a couple of times, you know, Rand or somebody or one of the other boys in their dreams noticed, wait a minute, Balsamon doesn't know something. You know, that was a big deal. We've seen that a couple of times now. I don't want to mention any examples because I might be thinking ahead, but I know we've seen it a couple of times now where it has dawned on our protagonists that the Forsaken don't know everything.
Well, and we can go back to the original. Deal. He didn't know which of the boys was the important one till the end of the first book. So, that already shows he's not omniscient, because he was kind of like, I think it's one of these three, so I'm going to mess with them. And
so there's something here on page 378. So it's just a couple pages into chapter 33, where Lan has rejoined the group, and he's found something weird, and Perrin is asking Moraine about these weird occurrences, because the chance kind of goes crazy around Rand, and the pattern does weird things. And as Perrin says, this is evil, Moraine. I can't believe Rand is evil. The pattern may be shaping itself around him, but how can the pattern be that evil? It makes no sense, and things have to make sense. If you make a tool with no sense to it, it's wasted metal. The pattern wouldn't make waste, which I love this interchange, because there you have, you know, Perrin's character encapsulated perfectly. You have Lan giving him a wry look, because that's Lan, and he's a bit of comic relief there of Lan looking at the blacksmith and going, oh, suddenly you're a philosopher. And then of course Loyal gets all interested. But then we get back to the philosophy of things we've talked about here a little bit. And I don't know if you want to talk about it a little more, but Moraine was silent for a time, warming her hands. Finally, she spoke, while staring into the flames. The Creator is good, Perrin. The Father of lives is evil. The pattern of age, the age lace itself, is neither. The pattern is what is. The wheel of time weaves all lives into the pattern, all actions. A pattern that is all one color is no pattern. For the pattern of an age, good and ill are the whoop and the woof.
And that's where we kind of gone back to our philosophy: is the Creator good? Or is the Creator himself neutral? And at that point, you would have to try to figure out, well, what is the good to counter the evil?
Right, which then gets you deeper into some of the philosophy. And I have read some interesting theses on this, that the Creator isn't good. It's just the creator, it's yin and yang, which runs through the philosophy of the Wheel of Time. The creator is pure order. The Dark One is pure chaos. He's entropy. He is the forces that want to tend the universe to chaos until it all falls apart. And the creator is the laws of physics that want to hold it all together. And you actually need both.
Well, and everything goes towards entropy.
Well, if you want to get philosophical, everything goes towards entropy. In this instance, using this analogy, it's because all lives are woven into the pattern. So people actually aid the Dark One because people tend to be chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're aiding that chaos. They're aiding that overall entropy. All right, enough with the philosophy.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say we could go down the free will debate again. Because does the pattern create your will, or is the pattern trying to work around will? And
I think that's just further proof that in whether he personally believed it or not, I think Jordan is portraying the creator as the clockmaker idea of God, which I talked about last time we got into this, that this is just further proof that this is the clockmaker. The creator created the clock and has wound it, and now is just making sure it stays on time. As you do with a clock, you just periodically have to adjust it.
Well, and here's kind of, again, we're staying on the philosophical route. Good and evil and dark and light are two different things. And if we notice in the book so far, because we've had a lot of experiences with the whitecloacks and we've had experiences with the dark friends, to be the two extremes of that, and then a lot in between, is it seems like the more you try to live to an ideal of the dark and light, the further you go to either extreme, the more evil you become. Whereas something in the middle seems to be the most altruistic to the rest of society. The whitecloacks do a lot of evil things in the name of the light.
Yeah.
Dark friends do a lot of evil things in the name of the Dark One. And of course, they don't even know what he has to say, but they all do these things in the name of that extreme. Whereas the people that are trying to live in the world and be among people in an altruistic way seem to be the good ones when it boils it down, which is a little bit of both, a little bit of darkness, a little bit of light. Okay, back to the books.
Back to the books. I almost went down another tangent there because there's actually a super dorky tangent, because I recently did a side quest in Final Fantasy 14 that actually kind of touched on these ideas. So all right, so we get into Remen, and there's lots of weirdness going on here of an Aiel in a cage, which we have seen before. And I can't remember if it was in a dream of Egwene's or in
I think it was a
viewing
Min
of
vision.
Min.
I think it was a Min
Yeah.
viewing.
So, but it wasn't when she told Perrin, because Perrin doesn't think about it when he sees this. He reacts later to a viewing because it kind of jumps in his face, and he knew about the Falcon. Anyway, so we've got an Aiel in a cage. We've got some boastful, dorky hunters for the horn, and then we've got a curiosity of a girl who's staring at Perrin, and Perrin finds this disconcerting and strange. So we're into chapter 34 now, and a few pages into that. So 390, he walks in on Moraine in a state of undress, which is hilarious. Giggity. Then he asks, where is it? So he asked about sensing. You told me once you could sense a dark friend, one who is very far gone into the shadow land too. Have you sensed anything like that? And why do you ask? There was a girl down in the common room staring at me, not at you and Loyal like everybody else, at me. The brush resumed motion and a smile briefly touched Maureen's lips. You sometimes forget, Perrin, that you are a good-looking young man. Some girls admire a pair of shoulders. He grunted and shuffles his feet. Oh no, I think she did tell him about the Aiel in a cage.
Yeah, that's what I was looking. I was looking back while you were talking.
Yeah, because he does. No, she could not help with Min's viewing, not beyond telling him what he already knew, that it was important. So, and I think that is referring to the Aiel, which is why he goes out there. Besides the fact that he thinks it's wrong, that he comments on, he and Loyal both, that the kids throwing rocks at the guy stuck in a cage is just plain wrong. So in the night, while everyone else is paying attention to the storytelling of the dorks, he goes outside because Moraine can't help. So he's got to figure out, all right, what does this Aiel in a cage mean? And he goes outside and he stares at it. And then basically instinct takes over because Perrin's a decent guy. And so he lets him loose because it's the right thing to do. And that's who Perrin is. I do like
trying to remember when Min says something to Perrin, because he tells her not to tell him what she sees around him.
It's at the end of that. It's at the end of that section where
after the wolves attack.
Yes, so it's when they separate. So that would be
ones come, the fight happens. Let's see. The Tinker dies. Massimo goes crazy.
It's in The Hunt Begins is the chapter.
Okay, well, you keep talking your thought here. I'll find it.
Yep, here it is. What did you see? An Aielman in a cage, she said promptly. A Tuatha on with a sword, a falcon and a hawk perching on your shoulders, both female, I think, and all the rest, of course. What is always there? Darkness swirling around you, and none of that, he said quickly. Do you have any idea what it means? The new things, because there are new things, is why she's telling him, because they suddenly popped up when it was time to go. So she knows it's something that's important on this journey. And she doesn't know. It's just turning points in his lives, and it's something important. So you're right. She did mention the Aiel and the Tinker with a sword, and then the Falcon and the Hawk. So I like the casual way that, so page 394 is what I'm looking at here. That Jordan tells you how badass both of these guys are. You are strong, Wetlander. The Aiel did not move beyond working his shoulders. It took 3 men to hoist me up there, and now you bring me down. Why? So he just casually brushes by the fact that Perrin is as strong as 3 normal guys. And then he just kind of casually brushes by the fact that, yeah, we knew the hunters were boasting, but we didn't know how horrible they were boasting until Gaul just kind of mentions, oh no, we were jumped and there were like 10 of them and 2 of us. and they still almost got the better of these, armored mounted fighters, just with the couple of them that were there after having been ambushed. And then and so when the white cloaks jump out at him, we get even more of it because Perrin refuses to think of himself as a fighter because he doesn't want to be. But given his strength and the fact that he's been in some fights now, he's actually pretty darn good with his axe.
Well, and also remember there was time when Lan was teaching him how to use the axe.
Yep.
So there's that as well. So
he has had, at this point, he has had both training and experience. Because you can punch a bag all you want, but boards don't hit back.
Yeah, boards don't hit back.
So I mean I think that's why your meme of what every guy is 1000% worse in a fight than he thinks it is. Because there's nothing that can take the place of sparring, and sparring can't take the place of a fight, because you have to meld the technique with the fact that now you have an opponent that's thinking for himself and moving of his own accord, and you have to react. You have to act and react in split seconds to someone who's going to do who knows what.
Well, and again, you brought up the strength aspect. He's as strong as 3 men. He's also as big because there's a weight ratio to lowering that cage as well. And I think one thing Jordan kind of, only in moments like that, you get the idea of actually how massive Perrin is. He's not as tall as Rand, but Rand is supposed to be like 6'6", 6'7". He could still be about 6'4", 6'5", and massive, broad in his shoulders.
He mentions a couple of times in his physical description, Jordan mentions that Perrin doesn't seem as tall as he is because he's so wide.
And he does mention that he is close to as tall as Rand a couple of times. And so he's basically, we're going to say somewhere around 6'4", and I picture him something like Eddie Hall, who's about 6'4" and 400 pounds. And he also can deadlift 1,100 pounds, right? So he's this massive, massive dude, one of the strongest guys in the world at this point. I've got a buddy, Micah. He used to play defensive line in college ball, and then in the Canadian Football League. And so he's a small defensive lineman because he didn't make it past the Canadian League, but he's still one of the top 1% in the world, right? And the second time I met him was actually at a nightclub. I'm leaving the club with the friends I was with, and I didn't even know he was there, but I guess he noticed me and he was drunk. And his hand comes over my head like that, and he whips me around by my head. Hey, I like you. And I was like, he could have broken my neck if I probably wasn't loose and drunk at that point, just because of the massive size advantage he has. He was also the guy I was working out with when I did this. So, but yeah, just people don't understand the advantage of size and strength when it comes to physical confrontation. That's why there's weight classes in MMA, right? To say, you know, as badass as Conor McGregor can be, if he fought Ngannou, he's getting his skull cracked. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is. And so you got to put Perrin on the size of massiveness. He's not only giant, but he's well muscled giant. He's not just this big fat man. And just that alone would put him head and shoulders even. You would have the skill level, so everything's an equation. Size and strength, the skill level would have to be up here, you know, if the other guy was this big. And it's I think people kind of don't get that idea, and they're like, oh well, he just made him badass real quick. No, you could put up your shield to block his axe and it's still going to go right through you.
Or you know, a couple of times, I think even in this fight here, we get where he blocks and shucks the other guy's weapon aside, which throws him off balance, which if you've ever wrestled, if you're in a stand-up neutral position and you try and get a double arm bar and shuck the other guy aside, as you say, this is why they're our weight classes, because it's going to be a lot harder for someone to be so much stronger that they can just ragdoll that guy if they're the same size. But if you're a heavyweight rolling with a middleweight, yeah, you can ragdoll that guy.
Oh, I think I've told it on here before when I was doing MMA and we were rolling in jiu-jitsu, and I was rolling with one of the heavyweights, and I got him in a perfect armbar. And you know what his defense was? He stood up and went. He flexed his muscle, and I'm on his arm right here, and stupidly I held on trying to finish it, and he just went. And then I woke up later.
I didn't get another concussion. I had a similar story where I got. It wasn't just that he was 80 pounds heavier than me, but I did get a little high, and so he rolled me. I was in top position, and he rolled me, and my foot stuck to the mat, and he rolled me so hard and fast that my pinky toe stayed over there.
Ugh.
It was hanging off. It was hanging off by a thread, and we kept going for like 30 more seconds before I finally said, "Hold on, stop. I think you dislocated one of my toes." And so he kind of gets up and he looks down, and I look up, and there's my pinky toe, and he goes, "Oh, sorry." And then he goes over to roll with someone else.
Oh, the good old days.
The good old days. All right. So
as we digress, but
All
I mean,
in
it's
Perrin
important
kick butt.
because we're establishing. I mean, the three boys, like you said, there's a debate on who's the best fighter in the group.
Yep.
And it's kind of it's like the debates I hate, who's the best basketball player or who's the best football player, because you got to separate it by position. And Perrin is the best Hulk smash fighter of the group. And Matt, I guess if you were to compare him to somebody we've seen in film, he would be what's his face from Game of Thrones that almost beat the mountain but got his head crushed in.
Ugh. Ugh.
You don't remember that one?
Oh no, I remember. That's why I say. Ugh.
But he was like that would be
What?
more like a Matt. They called him the Viper. I can't remember what his name in the show was, but what people don't also remember is that he was also bigger than an average man fighting the mountain. He wasn't just an average size dude. I think the actor's like 6'3" and
yeah, he's tall. I've seen him in other stuff next to other people, and he's quite tall.
He's also the Mandalorian. He plays, but yeah. So that would be more of a Matt style, and then Rand is something in between.
Yeah. So now it's time to run away because the girl was watching him. So chapter 35, the Falcon, not the Millennium Falcon. I don't know how much to say about this. It's rather amusing that
this is one of the characters I'm wondering if it's going to be in this show. And I've got my doubts because of how they started the show.
Oh boy, that would be really stupid, but I mean, I guess you could do it, especially as we've talked about, if you skip a big chunk of the fourth book, which we kind of think they might be doing. Yeah, you could leave her out, but she is a major part of Perrin's character because something we've talked about a number of times. She's so complementary to Perrin. It's not just that opposites attract. Well, actually, that's actually kind of silly. You have to be opposite in the right ways so that you become complementary. And in a lot of ways, and you see that pretty much right off the bat here when you see her introduction and how outspoken to the point of reckless she is.
I've seen the meme,
Perrin.
and it's like when the waiter gets your order, when an introvert's waiter gets the order wrong, but is with their extroverted friend, and the friend is like yelling at the waiter, but the introvert's like, that's kind of their relationship, where he's just kind of like, okay, we'll just go on and do our thing. And she's like, no, come back. He ordered it like this.
Yeah. So I mean, right off the bat, she's outspoken. She's telling him just straight off, this is who I am, and I'm going to follow you because uh because I'm a hunter and you're an oddity. So I want to see where you lead me, because I'm on an adventure. And he hates the idea of an adventure because it's been thrust upon him. He's seen all the negative downsides to it, like crying out loud, the poor Tinker woman who just got killed in front of him. So he's seen all the terrible downsides to it, and he would rather be back home living a quiet life, but he can't, and he knows he can't. So there's kind of a double resentment there of, I don't like this, but I have to do it, so I'm gonna. But it grates at him.
Along those lines, there's a good loyal moment coming up. Are we there yet?
In this chapter, or
Where he's like, okay, so it's chapter 35.
Yeah, that's where we're
On
at.
me on in the hardback is 320. It's the second page of it, and Loyal says, "This brings back memories, doesn't it, Perrin?"
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what memories? Why, it's like old times, sneaking away in the night with enemies ahead behind us and enemies ahead, and danger in the air and a cold tang of adventure. What the fuck are you talking about, Loyal? Setting the mood for the book.
Yeah, it's another great, every character, we've talked about this, that even the smaller characters have significance to them and have character to them, and Loyal is becoming kind of more human in ways, and Perrin is becoming more loyal. Where he's becoming kind of the stick in the mud, the quiet contemplative one, who's kind of, the solid rock that Loyal kind of was, and now Loyal's kind of getting into the excitement and the adventure, which he's made fun of for a little bit here and there. But I was the part that I like is just the end of it, that he's laughing at her because her name is I call myself Mandarb, and he starts laughing at her, and he see the big black stallion there? His name is Mandarb. Oh, okay. So she changes her hunter's name to however you pronounce that. I've always said fail, but I don't know that that's right.
I think it's Aiel. File. Hold on, we got a pronunciation guide here.
It's not in my glossary.
It might be under Zareen.
That's a good point.
Or under her last name, which we're not. Does she say it in there?
No, she doesn't say it for a while.
Okay, it is under her last name. File. And the eel is emphasized. So File. So there's your pronunciation, according to the glossary. And it is under her last name, which we're not supposed to know yet. So
yeah, no spoilers.
No spoilers, but that's what the comment's about. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, so that pronunciation also kind of lends itself to the look of her, of that kind of Central Asian Persian look that I kind of envision with how she's described, with how all of the brain fart. Where's she from?
Saldia.
So that, yep, there you go. I was trying to remember. For some reason, I could name every borderland country. I named all three of them and then stopped there and said, what's that one called? Anyway, so her introduction is lots of fun there, and she's important because this is the Falcon. And she tells you, and she's immediately kind of opposed yet complimentary to Perrin, and you, so something important is happening here.
Isn't this where Land offers to kill her too?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. I couldn't remember. Sorry. Didn't mean to spoil it for people, but I thought that was right when she kind of joined up.
Instead, we get some we get back to the wolf dream, and he can't avoid it any longer because he's stuck in a pretty dark and dangerous part of the world of dreams here. And so then Hopper shows up to try and help him. So he starts guiding him without Perrin knowing he's being guided and without him really having a choice. So this is kind of the start of him finally beginning to accept the wolf dream a little bit and be less scared of it. Cautious, yes, because Hopper will warn him that these things are dangerous, but he sees important things. So we see Balsamon, we see Lanfear, and so he knows that the Forsaken are moving in this dream world. He also sees how they oppose each other, that Lanfear has absolutely no fear of Balsamon, which I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, which is another name for the dark one.
Yeah.
Which is the best way I can phrase that right now, because we will find out more things later.
And to another one of our commenters, Scott, he talked about Lanfear and Celine having designs other than that are all her own, not along with the way. Again, we're trying to tread this lightly because we're trying to avoid spoilers.
Yeah,
as we go, especially with these characters, because there's so much impact later. I mean, even 5-6 books later.
But you can see early on that Lanfear is playing her own game for her own ends. She is aligned with the dark for sure, but she's not.
She's realistically only aligned with herself. It was just in the moment that she made her choices, the dark was the choice that got her way.
She's not following Balsamon's command. Yeah, here we go. This is what I was looking for. So it's 412 here in the paperback. Do you serve yourself now, Lanfear? Balsamon's voice was soft, but flame rage continued with his eyes, blah, 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 blah. I serve. Despite her words, she stood tall and defiant. I serve the great lord of the dark and none other forever. And then that kind of ends that. And Hopper leads him away and kind of gives so I love the device here of Hopper because it lets Jordan be cryptic. So he's not just giving you an exposition dump explaining to you, kind of like how we saw with Varen and Egwene. Varen was holding stuff back. So you haven't learned everything about the world of dreams yet. You're going to have to, you're getting enough to know what's going on, but he's still able to keep some mystery so he can reveal things in layers. So with Varen's explanations, it was because 1, her knowledge was limited, and 2, because she was holding stuff back for some reason. And here, Hopper's knowledge isn't limited, but his ability to explain it to a human is limited. And so Perrin's understanding is limited because the explanation he's getting is from a wolf's perspective. And they think differently, they see differently. So he's not fully understanding.
Well, and you got a moment where he explains that he flies there, and Perrin gets a little teared up,
gets a little misty-eyed. Yeah. Yeah, another great moment. And then oh, and then he sees Rand and Rand tries to kill him.
Oh, the good old days, like Loyal says.
Yep, the good old days. But as part of this acceptance here, you know, there's kind of more to it right away, because all right, so he's kind of accepting the wolf dream. So part of that is talking to Moiraine more. So the wolf dream ends and he actually goes to Moiraine and says, this is what happened, and was this important? And she kind of looks at him. There are women, she said slowly, who would do their best to gentle you if they heard what I just did. Because so it's it's part acceptance and part ignorance of what he's doing here, because and we kind of saw this at the very beginning of when Balsamon first appeared in their dreams of, holy crap, I'm not telling Moiraine that. You know, remember way back in Baerlon that the boys talked to Tom about it, and they had to run back to the inn to make sure Perrin didn't say anything, because by golly, no, don't tell Moiraine this, because, you know, who knows what she might do. If the dark one is in your dreams, that could mean, you know, super bad things, and she might just decide to, you know, take you out.
The circular talk there is funny, where she's like, there are women that would gentle you, and goes through this long thing that says, but you have nothing to worry about. You didn't have to scare me to tell me there's nothing to worry about. And she goes, oh, well, you do have reason to worry.
Yeah, just
They
not
might,
that.
Yeah, just not that. They might accidentally kill you in the process, but
plus there is the danger of the wolf dream itself, which is why she leaves him with that little burn scar and says, you know, let it be a reminder that you need to be very, very careful while you're hunting these webbits. Then we get we don't get a lot of Rand. We get him in these brief scenes, which I like, because I think it lends to the kind of hectic nature of his run, and kind of lends itself to his loneliness. And we kind of see how that's eating on his psyche, which is going to be impactful later. That he suddenly wakes up and realizes, I don't know how, but holy crap, I think that was really Perrin, and I almost killed him. And then we get this weird scene where he kills a bunch of people. Now, granted, they don't have their weapons out, and he could make a sword of fire magically appear in his hands, but that's still pretty not only badass, but kind of scary in the way that he does it, almost like a sociopath. There's like no feeling in it for him as he cuts down, you know, a dozen people. And this is something that's always made me go, is the way I read the scene. So there's an extra person there, and we've already been introduced to gray men. So I think you're supposed to realize that was a gray man who was just kind of standing there in the group that nobody saw because he's a gray man, and Rand sensed it and then killed a bunch of innocent people because he sensed the gray man. But he's being so harried, both awake and in his sleep, that he's becoming, I mean, darn near a paranoid schizophrenic.
Oh yeah, he's definitely lost touch with reality at this point.
Well, it's
I'm
just
looking
about
because
noon.
wasn't there something about the woman where she actually was?
I thought that was in one of the other scenes.
Because he says something about her being the most dangerous.
Yeah. So she was the most dangerous is what he thinks in his head. And so he jumps up and he takes her out first. And here we get the craziness. The power still filled him. The flow from Sidon sweeter than honey, ranker than rotted meat. Abruptly he channeled, not really understanding what it was he did or how, only that it seemed right, and it worked. Lifting the corpses, he set them in a line, facing him, kneeling, faces down in the dirt, for those who had faces left. Kneeling to him, I am the Dragon Reborn, he told them. That is the way it is supposed to be, isn't it? Letting go of Sidon was hard, but he did.
Okay, yeah. So,
and then
so this is
frowning, he
again
peered
where
at the line.
where reads come in handy. For some reason, the first time I had read that, she had done something too. But no, you're right. He did just kill probably 10 innocent people.
And there's an 11th man there that without armor, and he'd only counted 10 when they came up to the campfire, and he's without armor of any sort, but with a dagger still gripped in his hand. So he may have just killed 10 people just because he sensed that gray man and is fully paranoid. Well, you have any more thoughts on those chapters? I think chapter 37 is a good place to end it because it's
because it goes back to the girls,
and we're going back to the girls here, where a lot of interesting things are going to happen there as they leave.
Yeah, let me
Tarvalon.
Mark this, and we'll take a quick bathroom break, and we'll go through the comments real quick. And
oh yeah.
All right. So we wanted to move on to some comments that we got in feedback. Do you want me to pull it up on the screen, or do you want me to just read it?
Go ahead and pull it up.
There we go. All right. First of all, thank you for the comments. And this is kind of a long one, but Paul here says, can't get enough of people talking about my favorite book series. Interesting to hear a reread perspective for a change, since most people are going through the series are doing it from a new reader's perspective. You asked for feedback. Since you're fairly unique right now, I would have that in the description of the video as a reread. So that's probably a good idea. Also, and also describe what part of which book you were discussing in the episode. Contents, if you decide to spoil things for later books, that's okay. It's also okay not to. Just think you need to either decide in advance for each episode, or you can go back when the episode is recorded and add for which books the spoilers are. Pros and cons. Your unique perspective is more viable in his opinion. If you decide to announce that, i.e. the episode will have spoilers up until, but not beyond events of Knife of Dreams, perhaps. Okay, so pretty good feedback. And we're trying, and if you're watching this right now, we're trying not to do too many spoilers, because it's kind of it's not our reread that we're trying to avoid the spoilers for. It's because some of the people that we originally got on subscribing to us are doing it for the first time.
Yeah, we had a handful of people comment on our series review that they had not read the books yet, and they were going to after they watched that first terrible season. And so that's where the idea came from of, all right, well, let's talk about the books, and also talk about, I've also been trying to focus more on why they work rather than, the content. When content things do kind of jump out at us, we will mention them, in part because like we did today, the content is why it works. What's going on there with Perrin is why he's such a good and compelling character.
And on my end, it's very interesting to go through this reread with a better understanding of not only human nature, but the science around all of it. And it goes back to the saying, it's once you learn physics, you hate every action movie, right? And the fact that Jordan was a physicist and was really well versed in human nature, I think is actually what sets him apart from a lot of other series out there, because they're more about the events, where Jordan is about the nature of the people involved in the events. And so in this reread, that's what really jumps out at me, because it was, something I didn't know when I was a teenager. And in fact, realistically, probably learned a lot from reading these books, even though they were fictional. So that's kind of where we're coming from, our perspective. But as far as spoilers, we try not to give too many, but we also try to be clear when we do. And you're right, I do need to be more clear about in the titles of what sections we are in the book and what we're gonna probably be spoiling if we do. So yeah. Good feedback. There was another one, Scott, he talked about Matt and his dice being his just being Tavern. And we know that's the basis of it, but we're also trying to explore deeper, because if it was just about Tavern, then Rand's effects on these towns as they walk through would be different, or Matt and Perrin would have small effects like that as well. It's the fact that it manifests different in these individuals, that it's got to be something deeper than that. Why is Perrin one with the wolf? It's not a random event. Why is Rand able to channel the power? It's not a random event. Neither his father nor his mother could channel, right? And why is Matt so lucky? Not only is he so lucky, there's actually a deeper portion of that. How does he know when the luck is on and off? How does he feel the dice rolling and stuff? So there's something special about them that manifests. And yes, the basis is Tavern, but the manifestation is something about the individual. And so that's what we're trying to dive deeper in. And he also had a Celine comment, land fear comment, but we addressed that early in this episode, where there's so much with the Forsaken that spoils everything down the road, that we're trying to at least try to be real political in our talk on that.
Yeah. I will say that is, we've mentioned this before, that's one of the cons, one of the downsides of the series, is that too many of the Forsaken get short shrift.
And Agenor and Bethamel.
Yep. But the ones that you do get some depth on make them really, really good and really interesting. Landfear especially. There's going to be another one coming up that I don't even know if we've heard his name yet. It's going to drive you crazy through the whole book series. This is, as far as, I think if I were to do a top 5 of questions that were posted on forums and discussed and debated.
Okay, so let me cut you off, because I'm going to do some, as far as spoilers. So this might be something we do. We'll talk about it, trying to avoid all spoilers during the text talk, but then maybe at the end of each one say, okay, from here on out, we're going to have shit ton of spoilers. So stop it now if you're just now reading. And thank you for watching. Share, like, subscribe, all the standard things. We didn't give any medical advice, blah, 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 blah. And so from here on out in this episode, we're going to go and just say spoilers. So jazz hands, whatever we need to do. I may even get, I might even, it takes longer, but I might even get in the video editor thing and put a little like flashes spoiler or something. But yeah, so you're probably talking about Demandred.
Yep. Where is he?
The mystery of Demandred that you don't actually ever learn till the last book, and everybody speculates a certain person that he is him.
He's portraying himself as this person, which that is one of the things that you see right off the bat with Landfear and Celine is, she can, holy crap, she can make herself look differently. So you get that tease right off the bat, and then you actually see it happening as later when you actually see people. Well, actually, we're about to see here with Sammy, because we're about to see him. But the next time we come
But I'm
back
not
around to
sure.
Perrin. Yeah. The next time we come back around to Perrin, all of a sudden we've got a Forsaken masquerading as a real life person of now.
Now they do say that the closer you are to your original looks, the easier it is to hold. And that's
Yes.
another part where the speculation about that other person is because his description is very similar as well.
Yeah.
And it's
But in his case, I think he does what Ravine did, which is just kind of come out of nowhere and establish himself as some minor lord that nobody had ever heard of before, use a little bit of compulsion to make everyone accept you, and then use more compulsion to rise up the ranks. So I think that's what's going on with Sammy here as well. Um, but then of course we're going to see Lanfear, Asmodine, masquerading as different people. Lanfear, especially, a completely different
well, we've
person.
already seen her as Elsa as well.
Mhm.
So it's
Oh, yep, yeah.
and
So
Sylvie.
mhm.
So
We don't know why, but she's playing her own game. As we've mentioned, she's playing her own game, and I do have to think that she's not helping. Who is it, Bilal? She's not helping him with his schemes where he's trying to create a trap, use them as bait to pull Rand in, but it 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 works for her to help him for the time being. And my suspicion is that because she's confident that Lews Therin can kill him, and this will finally kind of force him to take the glory and the recognition that I want him to take, because she wants him to be the dragon. Because she doesn't care about turning Rand al'Thor. She cares about seducing and turning the dragon. So I think that's what her scheming is all about here.
well, and
And
remember,
why?
women date across and up, right? She doesn't want she wants the dragon, but she wants the dragon as a glorified caricature of himself. She
Mhm.
doesn't want the dragon as a farm boy, because she could have easily had that. She could have
No.
stayed Celine and he could have been who he was, and she could have seduced the hell out of him,
Oh
and
yeah.
it would have been over. But she doesn't want him unless he's an emperor, basically.
Yeah. And she wants to be the one that pushes slash guides him to that, you know, that emperor status, to claiming that and taking that. She wants to be the one that is there with him, guiding, pushing, making sure that he is the not just the trophy. It's in a way it's like what Grendel does, only a magnitude higher, because it has to be real.
Well, and this is where it gets complicated, because she wants that power for herself. And you would say, well, why doesn't she just take it? Well, because she also wants the man, but she wouldn't accept the man unless he had that power.
Mm-hmm.
So she wants that power through him because she wants both.
Yes.
She could easily go take the power. She's one of the strongest individuals in the world right now. Now that she's free, she could easily have that power for herself, but she also wants the man, but she won't accept the man unless he's got the power. So people are like, oh, it's a patriarchy thing or whatever. No, women have a certain they want a man that's worthy of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you see a lot of these power differentials, because they're creating that environment, because that's what's best for them. It's not a patriarchal and matriarchal thing. It's actually their desire, which is truthfully
it's doubly so for Lanfear, because it's personal.
Mm-hmm.
because Lews Therin rejected her for another woman, and how dare you?
Well, and when we're talking again, the dragon was the most powerful man.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it the fact that she loved Lews Therin, or that she loved the most powerful man? And
well, you actually see that. I mean, we're heavy into spoiler, because remember, at the beginning of the next book, she's going to reveal herself, and Rand has a Lews Therin moment there. of, you, where she's trying to convince him, no, you were always mine, you always loved me. And he has a loose Theron moment where he shouts out, and you loved power.
Mhm.
That that's what drove Lutz Theron away, because he was a do-gooder. And for him, her, even before she became Lanfear, he had left her because she was obsessed with power. And that wasn't him. That wasn't his complementarianism.
Yeah, as we talked about with Zareen and Perrin, her her character quirks that are the opposite of him actually complement him in a way that they actually benefit. They make him a better person.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Lanfear just eyed the power, and it actually would make Luz Theron be a worse person.
Yeah.
And
It's the way Fail is going to have Perrin kind of claim his greatness is not even remotely in the same way that Lanfear was trying to do it in that dream, where she had him in all this gilded armor and all this stuff, and trying, gilded armor and a crown, and that's what she was trying to seduce him with. And with with Perrin and Fail, it's just stand up for yourself and accept what other people are already putting upon you, which is this status as a leader. He doesn't want this status as a leader. He doesn't want to be responsible for other people's lives. And she's the one that has to push him and say, no, as as the analogy you used, you didn't order that, come back here and bring him what he ordered. And it's kind of the same thing of, no, this is what is, and you need to accept it. So in a lot of ways, she's kind of doing I hadn't really thought of it in these terms before, but she's going to do in the waking world what Hopper does in the Wolf Dream. Is she's going to be his kind of guide to accepting who he is ultimately, because he doesn't want to be, he accepts that he's Taveran. He accepts that he'd rather be, at this point here in the story, he accepts that he'd rather be living the quiet life of a blacksmith, but he can't. But he hasn't fully accepted the ramifications of that. He doesn't want any more than that.
Yeah, since we're in spoiler territory, this is where I think Sanderson didn't do Jordan justice, because Tuon was supposed to be that for Matt as well. And it was so rushed and sloppy in the end that, yeah, you get the end result, Matt, that Tuon was supposed to help him along with. But it was like the show. It was like you see them kind of going at each other and kind of going into that mold, and then they disappear and come back and he's there. 3 months later,
you don't get what you got in those 2 books of their courtship. Their courtship was very quick, but it was a lot of fun to read. Knife of Dreams is actually one of my favorites. I thought there's kind of a big chunk in the middle where that they weren't quite as enjoyable for me for a while. But then Knife of Dreams I thought was up there with some of my favorites. And a lot of it is the Matt and Tuon storyline of his the way he courts her, using Sun Tzu as a dating guide, and then the way he wins her over. And it starts in the book before it starts in Crossroads. But
again, we talk about compliments. Like we've brought up Karhain in the Game of Houses, but Shanshan was worse, right?
Yes.
And Matt is completely the opposite of we'll call it court intrigue. And so her influence in his life honed his skills as a general, whereas the same as Zareen's extroversion helps Perrin in actually molding into a leader himself. So again, the Tuon Matt story is similar. It's just so rushed at the end, and I don't think Sanderson.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Is you've got this great the last bit that Jordan did fully himself is this over sequence over 2 books of this courtship and then acceptance, and then and then sadly Jordan dies and Sanderson has to take over with just notes and sections that Jordan had written in various stages of completion. And you just don't get it. I can kind of see the template there of where Jordan probably would have done what we're talking about, and then it just didn't finish well. I thought Rand's arc finished well, where
Except that he never too ultimate spoiler. I was gonna say, except it ended evil, but
I that is something, one of the reasons I want to keep, do these as often as we can, because I want to get to the very, very end and say, what the hell was that?
Well, and it's the only it had to be Jordan's notes, because it's the only way he set it up to end realistically, because that's why we were all like, how the fuck is this going to end?
No,
and it's like the only thing that you come out and you're like, well, that actually made sense. Okay.
Jordan said on a number of occasions that he had the very last scene of the story in his mind before he even started writing Eye of the World. So he knew how it was going to end from the very beginning, which makes me wonder. I don't think that section there at the very, very end was his actual writing. And if he knew it, if he had it in his head, I wish he would have written it out fully and revised and complete, and because I don't think he did. I think he probably had notes.
It was definitely
in
Sanderson style, where Sanderson would bounce between characters, and he would always have two plots going at once, and he would constantly bounce. Where Jordan would give you a section, then it would go somewhere else, and it could go somewhere completely else, and everything. So,
we'll get to that. I got with the first time I read through the Sanderson books, I went, and then the second time I read them through, I was able, I thought, to see more where it was Sanderson's voice and where it was Jordan's voice, especially in that first book. Can't even remember what the title of that one is. That there seems to be more sections that Jordan had more fully written himself, but then in the last two, you don't see that as much. There's a definite style difference there, I think.
I'll try to find time to reread ahead more, but it's so tough because I'm doing all my other reading. Happiness Hypothesis is the current book going, which is actually excellent so far. And those journal articles and research articles are tedious to read. So that takes a lot of time. Plus working full time.
All right. Well, I think we've rambled enough about spoilers.
So
where things are going.
So let's try the compromise, Paul. We'll try to limit spoilers during the talk, and then kind of come on the end. It's like, this is what we wanted to say, in that moment, and just keep going from there. And we'll see how that works. And man, keep on watching. Help spread us around. It's just like you said, it's a different take, and I think that's what we're trying to bring to everybody. And there's millions of people that have read these things, so obviously a reread is a big audience that we can jump into. And again, everybody's going to have their own thoughts. Everybody overthinks Jordan, and we want to all overthink together. So
yes, that's how I learned about these silly books that get in the way of my Calc 1 studying, is because you were in a very animated discussion with a half dozen other nerds in the foyer of our dorm, and I said, what the heck are you guys talking about?
Yeah, and that was just through 1998.
That was 1998. So you were, and then I was eagerly awaiting Path of Daggers to come out, book 8 to come out, because it had been delayed for a bit because of the big white book.
Yep. All right. Anything else before we go?
Nope.
Well, we'll sign off. Healthier America, everyone. Like, share, subscribe. No disclaimers on this one other than read the damn books. They're good for you.